Introduction. Understanding the roots of poverty and wealth, karma and choice. Have you ever wondered, why is life so uneven? Why is it that some people are born into palaces, while others open their eyes to a life of struggle? Why do we see people who work tirelessly, yet remain stuck in hardship, while others, with seemingly little effort, live in abundance? These questions have been asked for thousands of years. And if you've ever asked them, you're not alone. Modern society often tells us, work harder, study smarter, hustle more. But if it were only about effort, then every farmer who wakes before sunrise and every laborer breaking their back would already be wealthy. And we know that's not the full story. So, what is? Today, I want to invite you into a deeper reflection, a way of seeing that comes from the teachings of the Buddha. It's not about blaming fate, and it's not about pointing fingers. It's about looking honestly at the roots of our life circumstances, the unseen web of karma, our past actions, and the powerful force of choice, what we decide to do in this very moment. You see, karma isn't some mystical punishment or reward handed down from the sky. Think of it more like planting seeds. If you plant a mango seed, you won't get a chili plant. If you sow kindness, generosity, honesty, those seeds grow into trust, respect, and often prosperity. On the other hand, if you plant greed, deceit, or exploitation, you may enjoy a short-term gain, but the soil you've cultivated will eventually bring struggle, mistrust, and loss. And yet, here's the important part, we are not trapped by karma. We are not prisoners of the past. While our previous choices may shape the conditions we begin with, the choices we make today shape the path we walk forward. That's why two people with the same background can live completely different lives, because of how they respond, how they choose, how they act in each moment. So, when we talk about poverty and wealth, let's look beyond the numbers in the bank. True wealth, according to Buddhist wisdom, is not just about money. It's about peace, generosity, wisdom, and the freedom of the heart. And true poverty is not only the lack of material things, it can also be the poverty of compassion, the emptiness of never feeling satisfied, no matter how much you own. Let me ask you this, have you ever met someone who had very little, but radiated a sense of joy, gratitude, and peace that made you feel they were the richest person in the room? And conversely, have you ever met someone with great wealth, but whose face was heavy with stress, suspicion, or loneliness? That's why the Buddha invites us not just to look at wealth and poverty on the surface, but to see the deeper currents beneath them. What seeds are we planting with our actions, words, and thoughts? What choices are we making, right here, right now, that will grow into our tomorrow? In this video, we will explore that together. We'll look at the unseen roots of poverty and wealth, not only as results of karma, but also as paths we shape with every choice we make. And along the way, I'll share some stories and reflections that may change the way you see your own life, whether you're struggling with scarcity or enjoying abundance. Because the truth is this, our outer circumstances may not always be in our control. But the way we cultivate our inner life, the seeds we choose to plant today, that is always in our hands. And that, my friends, is where true wealth begins. Part 1. The seeds we plant, good and bad karma. Think about this for a moment. If you plant rice, you don't harvest thorns. And if you plant thorns, you'll never gather rice. It sounds obvious in farming, right? But in life, we often forget that the same principle applies to our actions. Let me tell you a simple story. In a small village, there were two farmers. One spent his days sowing rice seeds with care, watering them, tending to the soil. When harvest season came, his barn was full, overflowing with golden grain. The other farmer, out of laziness, scattered thorn seeds without much thought. And when the rains came, his field grew wild with bushes and sharp thorns that pierced his hands when he tried to gather them. Now, you and I might not be farmers, but aren't our lives built the same way? Every choice we make, every action, every word, It's like planting a seed in the soil of our future. Some seeds grow into abundance, kindness, and trust. Others grow into hardship, conflict, and suffering. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, "As we sow, so shall we reap." It's not about punishment. It's not about reward. It's simply cause and effect, as natural as a seed turning into a tree. But here's the thing, we often underestimate the power of these small seeds. A smile you give to a stranger, a kind word when someone is hurting, or an honest choice when lying might have been easier, those are seeds of goodness. They may not bloom tomorrow, but like rice in the field, they mature in their own time, often when you least expect it. On the other hand, seeds of dishonesty, greed, or selfishness may bring a quick gain, just like weeds grow faster than crops. But they choke the soil, and when harvest comes, there's nothing nourishing left. Let me ask you, what seeds are you planting in your life right now? Are you sowing generosity, integrity, compassion? Or are you, perhaps without realizing it, scattering seeds of resentment, envy, or neglect? From my own experience, I've noticed something. When I live with intention, when I pause and choose patience instead of anger, or generosity instead of fear, I feel as though my future becomes lighter, more open. It doesn't always show up immediately as money or status. Sometimes it comes as trust from others, a peaceful night's sleep, or unexpected help when I need it most. That's also a form of wealth. And isn't that what we truly want? Not just material riches, but a life where our relationships are strong, our conscience is clear, and our heart feels full. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that wealth and poverty are not accidents. They are the ripening of seeds planted in the past. If we want a different harvest, we must plant differently today. So maybe the real question is not, why am I struggling, but rather, what am I planting now? Because tomorrow's harvest will depend on the choices we make in this very moment. Imagine if each of us began to see every action, every word, every thought as a seed. How differently would we live? Would we be more mindful before speaking? More generous in giving? More careful in choosing honesty over shortcuts? Life is nothing more than a field, and each of us is a farmer. The truth is, the harvest never lies. Part 2. Generosity, the root of true wealth. We often think of wealth as something we hold tightly, money in the bank, property under our name, treasures locked away. But here's a paradox worth reflecting on. The truly wealthy are not those who cling, but those who know how to let go. There's an old story told in Buddhist tradition about a wealthy man in a village. He wasn't known for his riches alone, but for the way he used them. Every time someone was hungry, he offered food. When the poor needed clothing, he gave without hesitation. His home became a place of refuge, his wealth a source of comfort for many. When he passed away, it was said that he was reborn into realms of abundance, carrying with him the fragrance of his generosity. In contrast, there was another man, equally wealthy, but deeply afraid of losing what he had. He locked his treasures away, counted his coins daily, and trusted no one. He never gave, never shared. And when he died, his wealth could not follow him. All that remained was the narrowness of his heart, a poverty that no gold could disguise. So let me ask you, when you think of the wealthiest person you know, do you measure their richness by what they own, or by what they give? The Buddha taught, generosity brings the blessing of wealth, while miserliness leads to lack. On the surface, this might sound mystical, but if you look closely, it's also practical. Think about the people you enjoy being around. Are they the ones who hoard and cling, or the ones who give freely? Generous people attract goodwill, trust, and connection. Their lives are supported by community, and opportunities seem to find them. And here's something I've observed in my own life. When I give, even if it's small, I feel lighter. A weight lifts from my chest. Sometimes, the return is not immediate or financial, but it shows up in surprising ways: a door opening, a hand reaching out when I need help, or simply the joy of knowing I eased someone else's burden. That joy itself is a form of wealth, one that no one can take away. Of course, giving doesn't always mean money. It can be time, attention, a listening ear, a kind word. How often do we underestimate the power of presence? Sometimes the most generous gift is simply being fully there for someone who feels unseen. And yet, many of us hold back. We think, I'll give when I have more. But what if generosity itself is the path to having more, not just materially, but spiritually, emotionally, relationally? When we cling too tightly, our hearts shrink. But when we open our hands, our world expands. So, maybe the question is not, how much do I have, but, how much do I share? True wealth is not measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your heart. The more you give, the more you realize. Abundance was never about possession, it was about circulation, about allowing blessings to flow through you, not just to you. And that is why, in the wisdom of the Buddha, generosity is the root of wealth. Part 3. Right livelihood versus wrong livelihood, the path we choose. We often hear people say, your past defines you. And yes, our past choices, the seeds we've planted, do shape the ground we stand on today. But here's something just as powerful. The way we choose to live right now, especially the way we earn our living, also shapes our destiny. Let me share a simple story. In one town, there was a merchant who was clever, maybe too clever. He cut corners, lied about the quality of his goods, and overcharged his customers. At first, he made a lot of profit. People thought, he must be doing something right, look how much he's earning. But slowly, word spread. People stopped trusting him. His shop became empty, and in time, he was left with nothing, not only poor in money, but also poor in reputation. In the same town, there was another merchant. He was slower to rise. His profits were modest. But he was honest. If a product was flawed, he told the truth. If a customer was struggling, he gave them time to pay. People came to trust him, not only for what he sold, but for who he was. And over the years, his business grew strong, not through tricks, but through trust. His livelihood became a source of blessings, not just income. This is the difference between wrong livelihood and right livelihood, a principle the Buddha emphasized. Wrong livelihood is earning wealth in ways that harm others, through deceit, exploitation, or violence. Right livelihood is building a life, and a living, in a way that supports rather than destroys, that uplifts rather than deceives. Let me ask you, what is wealth if it costs you your peace of mind? What is success if it leaves behind a trail of broken trust? In our modern world, this teaching feels more relevant than ever. We live in a culture that often glorifies shortcuts, get-rich-quick schemes, manipulative marketing, or chasing profit at any cost. But deep down, we know this, wealth built on lies cannot last. Eventually, it collapses, and the damage reaches not only others, but also ourselves. From my own perspective, I've noticed that when I make choices aligned with honesty, even if they slow me down, life feels steadier. The relationships I build are more genuine. The opportunities that come my way feel more supportive, less forced. That sense of stability, of integrity, is a wealth far greater than money alone. And here's the beauty of it. Right livelihood doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you pause and ask, is this way of earning harming anyone? Is it aligned with compassion, with fairness? That question alone can shift the way you live and work. The Buddha's wisdom is simple but profound. Lasting wealth, the kind that truly sustains, comes from living and earning in alignment with truth and kindness. Because at the end of the day, money comes and goes. But the trust of others, the peace in your own heart, that's what endures. So maybe the real measure of success isn't just how much you earn, but how you earn it. Right livelihood is not just about surviving. It's about living in such a way that your life itself becomes a blessing to you and to those around you. Part 4. Greed and the Suffering of Lack. Hook. Have you ever noticed that the more someone tries to hold on, the emptier they often feel? Story. There was once a man who had 10 bars of gold. By anyone's standards, that's a fortune. Yet he couldn't sleep at night, because his neighbor had 20. His life was filled with comparison, resentment, and the constant fear of never having enough. On the other hand, another man lived with only a few coins to his name. But he smiled easily, shared what little he had, and slept peacefully. Why? Because his heart knew contentment. Reflection. Isn't it strange that abundance doesn't always guarantee happiness? Greed has this way of convincing us that no matter what we hold, it's never sufficient. And that cycle of wanting more can feel like drinking salty water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Think about your own life. How often have you finally gotten what you wanted, only to quickly move on to the next thing? Did it really bring lasting peace, or just another craving? Perspective. From my own observation, the people I've met who radiate true wealth are not necessarily the ones with the biggest houses or the highest incomes. They are the ones whose hearts are steady, who appreciate what they already have. There's a freedom that comes with being satisfied, not a passive resignation, but an inner fullness that no amount of money can buy. Teaching, the Buddha said, the one who knows contentment is truly the richest. Poverty or wealth is not only measured by possessions, but by the state of one's mind. If you can recognize sufficiency, gratitude turns every meal into a feast, every home into a palace, every relationship into a treasure. Closing thought. So maybe the real question isn't, how much more can I get, but rather, when will I allow myself to feel enough? Because sometimes, the greatest wealth is already in your hands, you just need to see it. Part 5. Blessings from past lives no one gives, no one takes away. Hook. Have you ever wondered why some people are born into palaces while others open their eyes to a world of hardship? Why does life seem so uneven from the very first breath? Story. The Buddha once explained this mystery through the lens of karma. He spoke of a king who, in his past life, had made offerings, supported the monks, and protected the teachings of truth. In this life, he was born into wealth and honor, not by accident, but as the natural result of seeds he had planted long before. On the other hand, there was a beggar who lived in constant poverty. The Buddha revealed that in his previous existence, this man often stole from others and never practiced generosity. The poverty he faced now was not punishment, but the echo of his own actions. Reflection. It's tempting to believe that fortune or misfortune is just random luck. But what if the deeper truth is that nothing in life comes from nowhere? Everything carries a cause behind it. Just as a farmer reaps the harvest of the seeds he sowed seasons ago, so too do we live in the harvest of choices made long before, even beyond this lifetime. Perspective. To me, this teaching isn't about fate or feeling helpless. Quite the opposite, it's empowering. If wealth and struggle are not arbitrary, then every action we take today matters. Every small act of kindness, every moment of generosity, every choice to do good, plants seeds that will ripen into blessings we might not even imagine. Think about it. What kind of future would you like to step into? And what seeds are you planting for that today? Teaching. The Buddha's wisdom is clear. Wealth or poverty does not happen by chance. They are the fruits of karma, of the actions we choose. No one else can hand us fortune, and no one can take it away. It is a law as natural as gravity. Closing thought. So instead of asking, why was I given this life, maybe the more transformative question is, what am I creating with the life I have right now? Because in the end, blessings are never bestowed, they are built. Part 6. Choices in the present. Karma is created every day. Hook. The past may decide where we begin, but the present decides where we are going. Story. Imagine someone born into poverty. It would be easy for them to blame fate, to sink into despair and say, this is all my life will ever be. But instead, they make a different choice. They study hard, they practice honesty, they commit to living with integrity. Step by step, the weight of old karma begins to lift, and their life slowly transforms. What seemed like a fixed destiny shifts, simply because they chose differently in the present moment. Reflection, isn't that a powerful thought? We can't rewrite the past, but we can rewrite the direction of our future, starting now. Karma is not a prison that locks us in forever. It's more like a garden. Some plants were seeded long ago, and we may still need to tend to them. But every single day, we have the power to plant something new. Perspective, I find this teaching deeply liberating. Because it means that no matter how heavy our past may be, it does not define the whole of our lives. Yes, past actions create the foundation, but what we do today is like holding a brush in our hands. We can paint over old shadows with new colors. We can choose generosity over greed, kindness over resentment, courage over fear. These choices accumulate, and over time, they reshape the very landscape of our existence. Teaching, the Buddha put it simply, no one saves you but yourself. Past karma might explain where we are standing, but present choices are the steps that move us forward. Each decision, big or small, is a seed of tomorrow's reality. Closing thought, so the real question becomes, what are you planting today? Are your words, your thoughts, your actions leading you toward a future of peace and abundance, or toward more struggle? Remember, the past may set the stage, but the present writes the script. And the pen, right now, is in your hands. Part 7. Comparison and envy, the root of suffering. Hook. Many people don't truly suffer because they are poor. They suffer because someone else seems richer. Story. Imagine two neighbors living in the same village. One is a farmer with very little money, yet he wakes each day with gratitude. He tends to his crops, eats simply, and laughs with his family. His life, though modest, is full. The other neighbor owns more land, more animals, more wealth. Yet every time he sees someone with a bigger house or a fatter harvest, his heart burns with envy. Despite having more than enough, he is never satisfied. In truth, who is poorer between the two? Reflection. This is the hidden trap of comparison. The moment we measure ourselves against others, we create suffering that doesn't need to exist. There will always be someone who has more, someone who seems luckier, someone whose path looks smoother. But if we live chasing that endless scale, we will never taste peace. Perspective. I think many of us have felt this, haven't we? You might have a good job, a warm home, loving relationships, but one scroll through social media, and suddenly it feels like everyone else is ahead of you. And that tiny seed of envy can quickly grow into dissatisfaction, resentment, even despair. The irony is, nothing outside of you actually changed. The only thing that shifted was your mind comparing. Teaching, the Buddha taught, one who does not compare or envy, even if poor, is truly rich. Real wealth is not measured by bank accounts or possessions, it's measured by a mind free from jealousy. Because envy blinds us to the blessings already in our hands. Gratitude, on the other hand, opens our eyes to abundance that was always there. Closing thought. So the question is, do you want to live chasing shadows of what others have, or live grounded in the light of what you already hold? When you stop comparing, you stop suffering. And in that moment, even if you own little, you realize you are already enough. Part 8. Wealth without wisdom, the real poverty. Hook. There are people who possess mountains of wealth, yet inside they feel restless, lonely, and burdened. Is that true richness, or a deeper form of poverty? Story. Picture a wealthy merchant with chests of gold stacked high in his home. From the outside, everyone envies him. But every night, he lies awake, tossing and turning, afraid of thieves, betrayal, and loss. His heart is chained by fear. Now picture a poor woodcutter. He owns little more than his axe and a small hut. Yet when the sun sets, he lies down on his bamboo bed, breathes deeply, and sleeps in peace. Who, in that moment, is truly wealthy. Reflection: we often confuse wealth with security or happiness. But history and even our modern world show us otherwise. How many celebrities, billionaires, or powerful leaders have reached the top, only to still feel empty inside, or worse, fall into despair? On the other hand, there are countless ordinary people with modest means who radiate joy, kindness, and contentment. Perspective: to me, this is a reminder that wealth without wisdom is fragile. It creates the illusion of abundance, but often hides a heart in poverty. True wealth is not just having possessions, it's knowing how to live peacefully with what you have. A person with wisdom can turn little into enough, but a person without wisdom can turn everything into nothing. Teaching: the Buddha taught, only the wise are truly rich. Material wealth does not follow you after death. Only your karma and your wisdom remain. This is a teaching that invites us to shift our focus. Instead of asking, "How much do I own?" we might ask, "How deeply do I understand life? How much peace do I carry within?" Closing thought: so maybe the real treasure worth seeking isn't in banks or vaults, but in cultivating wisdom, compassion, and understanding. Because when you have that, even if your pockets are empty, your heart will never feel poor. And that kind of wealth can never be stolen. Part 9: Poverty and Pride Overcoming Suffering with Humility. Hook: poverty itself is not the deepest suffering. What often hurts more is when our pride is wounded, when the I inside us feels diminished. Story: imagine two men living in hardship. The first one is poor but humble. He accepts help with gratitude, learns from those around him, and treats others with respect. People admire his attitude, and little by little, opportunities come his way. Life begins to shift. The second man is also poor, but prideful. He refuses advice, feels insulted when offered help, and distances himself from others. Because of his pride, he closes every door that could have lifted him out of hardship. In the end, who truly suffers more? Reflection: this story shines a light on something we all face. Poverty in itself is difficult, but when pride is added to it, suffering doubles. Sometimes it's not the lack of money that crushes us, but the shame of not being enough compared to others. And pride can make that shame unbearable, because it doesn't allow us to receive support or admit our need. Perspective: I believe humility is one of the most underrated forms of strength. To bow your head, to listen, to learn, to accept help when needed, that is not weakness. It is wisdom. Think about it. Every person who has ever grown, who has ever risen from hardship, did so by first being willing to learn and to accept. Pride closes doors, humility opens them. Teaching: the Buddha's teaching reminds us, humility and a willingness to learn are the bridges that carry one from poverty to abundance. True transformation doesn't begin with riches, it begins with the heart. A humble mind invites blessings, friendships, and knowledge. And these are the seeds that eventually blossom into prosperity. Closing thought: so perhaps the real question isn't, am I poor, but am I humble enough to grow? Because with humility, even in difficult times, life offers a path forward. Without it, even wealth can slip away. Remember, when you lower the walls of pride, you open the gates of fortune. Part 10: Wealth and poverty are impermanent. Have you ever noticed how fragile our ideas of being rich or poor really are? Today you may hold wealth in your hands, tomorrow it may slip away. You may feel poor and lacking now, but in the unfolding of life, everything shifts. Wealth and poverty are not fixed, they are passing conditions, like clouds drifting across the sky. History tells this story better than anything. Think about the great empires of the past, dynasties that once glowed with unimaginable splendor, palaces filled with treasures, gold stacked like mountains. Where are they now? Many have faded into ruins, their treasures scattered, their palaces turned to dust. What seemed unshakable wealth became nothing more than a memory. And on the other side, there were countless men and women who lived through hardship, patiently walking the path of virtue and wisdom. Over time, some of them rose into abundance, even rebirth into lives of prosperity and joy. So let me ask you, what does it really mean to be rich, if it can vanish in a blink? And what does it mean to be poor, if suffering can also transform and dissolve? If everything we cling to is impermanent, then perhaps the truest treasure is not found in our bank accounts, but in the qualities we carry within. The Buddha's teaching is clear: all things are impermanent. That means the mansion and the shack alike will pass, just as storms and clear skies come and go. But there are forms of wealth that do not decay. When you cultivate wisdom, no one can take it from you. When you live with compassion, it becomes a treasure chest that follows you across lifetimes. I often think of it this way: the wealth of the world is like water held in your hands. No matter how tightly you squeeze, it slips away. But wisdom and compassion, they are like seeds planted deep in the earth. Even if a storm comes, they sprout again, season after season. So if wealth and poverty are impermanent, where should we place our faith? In what endures? In the wealth of the heart. In the richness of awareness, kindness, and understanding. That is the kind of wealth that never fades, the kind of fortune you can carry with you beyond this lifetime. The Buddha reminds us, take wisdom as your true possession, take compassion as your treasure chest. Only then will you know a wealth that death itself cannot destroy. Conclusion: wealth and poverty are just passing clouds. My friends, as we come to the end of this reflection, let me leave you with a question. Too often we ask, why am I poor? Why are they rich? But the deeper, more transformative question is this: what seeds have I planted in the past? And what seeds am I choosing to plant today? Because wealth and poverty are not the ultimate truth. They are like clouds drifting through the vast sky, sometimes dark, sometimes bright, sometimes heavy with rain, sometimes vanishing without a trace. If we chase the clouds, we remain restless. But if we understand the sky, we find peace. In the same way, wealth and poverty may come and go, but what truly matters is the soil of our heart and the seeds of our choices. Think about it: what good is wealth if it makes us arrogant and forgetful of others? What harm is poverty if it awakens compassion, humility, and strength within us? History has shown us both sides: kings who lost everything because of greed, and ordinary people who, through patience and virtue, grew into lives of abundance. So perhaps the question is not why me, but what will I do with what I have right now? The Buddha's wisdom is clear: our circumstances are shaped by both karma and choice. Karma explains where we begin, but choice directs where we go. If we have been handed hardship, we can still plant seeds of kindness, discipline, and awareness that bloom in future seasons. If we have been given abundance, we can choose to use it as a tool for generosity, for creating peace, for lifting others. In both cases, the real treasure lies not in what we hold in our hands, but in what we cultivate in our hearts. I often like to think of life as a garden. Some of us inherit fertile soil, some inherit rocky ground. But no matter where we begin, we all have the power to plant. If we plant weeds of resentment and greed, they will choke us. If we plant seeds of wisdom, compassion, and patience, they will grow into a forest of blessings that can shelter us for a lifetime and beyond. So the truth is this: wealth and poverty are passing conditions, but karma and choice are the roots. When we understand this, we no longer blame life for being unfair, nor boast when fortune comes our way. Instead, we walk the middle path, grateful, mindful, and intentional. And when we live this way, a new kind of wealth begins to blossom. Not the kind you measure in numbers, but the kind you feel in your heart. Wealth of wisdom that helps you see clearly. Wealth of compassion that allows you to love deeply. Wealth of inner peace that no loss can take away. So, my friends, do not be fooled by appearances. Rich or poor, it all fades like morning mist. The true question is, what will you choose to plant today? because the harvest will surely come, and the garden of your life will reflect the seeds you've sown. May you walk wisely, sow kindly, and discover the kind of wealth that no time, no loss, no death can ever raise.